Walls obviously create friction, which increase costs.
Public-private cooperation really play a role here.
The perfect world, one would see open trade, connection, it drives GDP, it drives growth, and that's what we're all talking about.
We're here at the ICC Banking Commission in Paris, and we're about to sit down and talk to the Vice Chair of the Commission, Marilyn Blattner-Hoyle, who is Head of Public Sector Solutions at Swiss Re. At a time of increasing extreme geopolitical fragmentation and rising risk, it's important to understand why industry cooperation and international collaboration is so important. So Marilyn, welcome.
A pleasure. Good to see you.
So Marilyn, we're seeing an increasingly fragmented global economic environment. Does that make the role of global setting bodies such as the International Chamber of Commerce and Banking Commission more important than ever?
Absolutely. So we're here today, of course, at the Banking Commission meeting with the International Chamber of Commerce. And so at a time like today, absolutely, it's important. Creating standards, connecting voices, and being that voice of the business that then translates into policy connection.
Brilliant. And actually, bodies like the ICC were established after World War I. And you've been participating in many of the multilateral cooperation meetings, such as the UN FFD4, Davos, the World Bank spring meetings. Would you say the industry really is moving towards greater cooperation, or this is about managing fragmentation more pragmatically?
So I see that fragmentation is on the rise. That's a reality. And at the same time, cooperation is in many ways on the rise. And you can see that with the meetings today, with the way the different national committees are connecting and thinking about standards and thinking about interoperability. And yet pragmatism is absolutely critical. Having a voice and listening to national priorities and understanding how to connect those pieces together. That's ever important. That's the role that many of these different connection opportunities, convening moments have.
Thank you. And well, here we are in the European Union, and that plays a unique role. I'd probably argue and say somewhat different to other parts of the world. What would you say is the European Union's role in shaping global financial architecture, and what unique role do you think it can play in shaping and strengthening trade finance in terms of providing that stability and cooperation?
Yeah, so you said it well. I mean, the EU is a champion of rules-based order, of cooperation, of stability, of that pragmatism that we've been speaking of. And so the EU has a place to play in driving this global mobility of capital, of the opportunities to have trade across borders. I mean, we're a great example of that in Europe. And so for trade finance, I think the EU has a place to play in the global sphere of showing the benefits of that ecosystem, of sharing that regulation can drive this capital mobility. And we talk about this a lot, particularly in reinsurance. We need there to be global risk pools for reinsurance to make sense. That's how we offer our balance sheet to our clients, to governments, and of course corporates. And that's also how we ensure that then there's diversification of risks. So we want to avoid walls to capital, and this is critical for trade as well. We want to avoid walls for trade. And so across the Banking Commission, across all of the players from banks to insurers to fintechs, the idea is really how do we keep that fungibility? How do we keep that ecosystem connected while still understanding national priorities?
And I guess without those walls, you can become more inclusive when it comes to developing, emerging and frontier economies, and we can really develop common rules and common standards, which the International Chamber of Commerce is particularly renowned for. Why would you say having that shared rule book is still so important in a world, as you said, that's becoming increasingly regionalized?
Absolutely. So walls obviously create friction, which increase costs. And in the perfect world, one would see open trade connection. It drives GDP, it drives growth, and that's what we're all talking about. How do we get to that? And so the Banking Commission itself, I mean, some of the contributions, let's say, one that's particularly important for trade is around data, the trade register. And in the insurance industry, it's the same, data around natural catastrophes. This is how we attack and work together on the biggest gaps that we all face. So we've got the trade finance gap, still two trillion. You and I have been talking for over a decade about the trade finance gap, and it remains. On the reinsurance side, we often talk about the protection gap, governments having to fund themselves disasters that happen and are happening with increasing frequency. And so it's convening with the ICC and with other bodies, with the multilaterals that are so important, to make sure that we reduce that friction, to have that playbook, to have the standardization that allows us all to work together and tackle these very difficult issues and challenges that governments and companies and ultimately populations are facing.
Absolutely. And can public-private cooperation really play a role here? I mean, you come from insurance, reinsurance, you've got the lenders, you've got the policymakers.
Yes. I mean, in summary, of course, I might be biased because I head public sector for Swiss Re, where for over a decade we've been really a champion and supporting public-private partnership, which is all about governments, multilaterals, humanitarian orgs bringing their capacity to convene, to deliver incentives, to create policy that actually drives solutions to these gaps. But then the private sector is here to create exponential benefit, to make sure every dollar of funding goes further. And that's on the basis of first data and understanding. And that's where the trade register is also interesting. But then, of course, that goes to capital. And the private sector can bring capital to push those needs further.
I mean, it's effectively mobilizing private capital, expanding risk, which ultimately helps real economy finance, which I think we're all here to do, right?
Exactly. And just ensuring that governments and companies and people understand the risks they're facing, can reduce those risks. So prevention is often really the first stage of understanding in both trade and in natural catastrophe. But then moving forward to how do you allocate that capital to have the biggest impact?
And I guess in your role as vice chair of the Banking Commission, what can members do to engage with the Commission and share what they're doing right now and get more involved to actually make and shape the future?
Well, the Banking Commission is what it is thanks to all of the national members and all of the working groups that work across the different pieces, from digitization to the trade register and how we expand data, and ultimately how do we promote trade across the world and attack that protection gap. So I would say contributing time and expertise is absolutely critical, and we're so grateful for that in the Banking Commission. Equally, the ideas and the upholding of the ICC rules and promoting the benefits of those rules, bringing those to the convening forums that happen elsewhere. That's really where ICC promotes this voice of the business, ensuring that then reduces friction, reduces walls that we've talked about, and ultimately fosters stability and development, which we all prosper from. So I would say contribute that time, contribute that expertise, and propagate the standard and rule-based order that we believe can drive success.
Thank you. And let's talk about future-proofing ICC. How do we ensure that the ICC remains indispensable for global trade and finance?
I would say I would give you two P's. The first is prioritization. There are many challenges around the world, and we need to pick the challenges where we can have impact. And upholding the ICC rules in a multipolar world is the first of those. And then the second, I would say, is pragmatism. There are, and we talked about it today with a variety of different governments and member states that are here, there are different needs in different nations and different places, and having a voice for those and letting those be heard is critical, and then coming together and finding that common ground, that interoperability, and that place where we all prosper together with trade, and then of course with tackling challenges like natural disaster together.
Prioritize and be pragmatic. Those are the words from Marilyn Blattner-Hoyle, Vice Chair of the ICC Banking Commission here in Paris. Marilyn, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Depeche.